For me, the word spiritual is a reconnection with the non-physical part of you and a full realization and understanding that you are not just this human robot that has to eat, sleep, shit, repeat, go to work, pay your taxes, get a pension, go on a cruise and die.
Hello and welcome back to the Kelly Lumberg podcast. I'm your host, business mentor and personal brand and style expert who is on a personal mission to inspire a minimum of 5 people daily to take action, do something different and show up as the best person that they aspire to be. And each week I hear from you, which I love, on Instagram or on Facebook to say you're one of the 5 a day who's been inspired by something that you've listened to or heard from one of the guests. And I love this. So please keep doing that. Drop a review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't done so already. And if you haven't come and said hi on Instagram, Kelly Lumberg Official, please do. I'd love to meet you. And what was the episode or what was the one thing that you heard one of the guests say that made you do something different? Now, in today's episode, I'm super excited to share with you. We catch up with Noor Hibbert. Now, I first came across her book a couple of years ago and I listened to it within 2 days. And I knew as soon as I launched my podcast that I wanted her to be one of my guests. She's got incredible energy and I love that her mission is to not only make spirituality sexy, but to make personal development more mainstream so that everyone has the opportunity to live happier, more fulfilling lives. Couldn't agree with this more. In this episode, we talk about how you can be rich, the myths surrounding money, which there's loads of, and how to make a mindset change, how you can manifest anything that you want in life. And she has so many examples, which I know are going to make the little hairs on your arm stick up like they did for me. Noor's created 2 6-figure businesses in just 3 years whilst raising 3 small children. And, you know, she is embarked on this spiritual journey, which she honestly believes has accelerated her success. So enjoy this honest, energetic episode. Welcome to the show, Noor. It's so good to have you.
Thank you so much. If anyone wants to listen to the bloopers of how many times it took us to say welcome to the show, that'll be at the end of this episode.
I love it. Now, I came across you originally, I think it was a couple of years. Your first book just came out. It came up on Audible. I loved the title. And then I remember walking around, where was I, living in Dubai at the time? But walking around, listening to every day. And I'm like, love this woman. One day I'd love to have a conversation with her. And 2 years later, here we are. So
amazing. I didn't realize that was how it happened.
Yeah. And then, followed you on social media and always loved your messaging. And you're always so honest. And, everything in your book was just, it was, I say, an easy story in the sense it was really great to listen to because it was like you were just chatting to me. Like, hopefully people listening today will think the same. So for those that don't know you, do you want to give a little backstory?
Oh my gosh, yeah, sure. So my name is Noor Hibbert. I help people to transform their mindset so they can master manifestation and create a life of freedom. So like if I had a tattoo, which I don't, it'd be like freedom fighter. I really I just have, ever since being younger, I just felt like I was never meant to be part of the mold. I always felt like an outsider. I always felt like I didn't want to do things the way that other people wanted to do things. And I just felt like life didn't make sense to me. Like life as I saw other people living never made sense to me. And this is a very weird sensation as a child to have, is what, like, something's not right. And I used to close my eyes and ask my mum, like, I don't understand. When I close my eyes, there's something inside me. I can hear a voice in my head. Like, who is that inside? And these were, crazy questions for like a young child to ask. So I kind of guess ever since I was very young, I kind of just always felt this like separation from everybody else in terms of like what everyone was doing. So I think that separation actually from the real world, in inverted commas, actually led me to being actually quite mentally unwell. I really struggled through my childhood with being bullied, with always feeling like an outsider. My parents divorced when I was younger, and that was a very, 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 I was actually really happy they divorced. It was like the best news. Like, I wasn't one of those children that was like, oh my God, my parents are divorced. It was the best thing. Like, I lived in World War III. So for them divorcing, it was the best thing. But it was very, very traumatic afterwards with all the fighting and the custodies and all of that jazz. So that went through. I then was getting really badly bullied at school at one point, and I really was at a point where I didn't want to be around. Like when you already feel like you don't belong anywhere, and then people in your world make you feel like that even more. I got to a point sort of then when I was 16, I had got into a relationship with an older boy, and hashtag daddy issues. My dad really wasn't emotionally available to me my whole life, and then my parents divorced, and he was even less available. And I had this older boy come in my life, who was 5 years older. And, I fell completely in love. We would drive in his little white Citroen AX down to Brighton and eat chicken nuggets from McDonald's. And, I was living the good life. But unfortunately, he had his own problems. And unfortunately, I became the product of his own family's, his dad was an alcoholic. I didn't, I didn't really know what happened behind closed doors, but I became the punching bag, not physically, but very, I was a 16-year-old girl who was in a very emotionally abusive relationship, but didn't realize that, of course, till I was an adult. But like, for example, he tried to commit suicide because I wanted to go out with my friends. So, I'm in A&E with my mom while he's having his stomach pumped because he's taking all these pills, and he's telling me, this is your fault. If you leave me again. So this was just but that was the most severe of a lot of little experiences. I mean, once I was in a pub and he threw a pint of beer over me because he thought a boy was looking at me and said, but for me, as a 16-year-old girl, I didn't realize that this wasn't normal. And I sort of stayed because I mentally wasn't very well. And I got to the point where I was then, put onto antidepressants because I didn't know what to do anymore. So I was really in a bad place at the age of 16.
Did family and friends try and help with that sort of thing?
So, yeah, I mean, it was really hard because at the time I kept it quite secret because I felt quite ashamed. I didn't really know what was wrong with me. And this actual conversation I had with my mum probably about 5 or 6 years ago was when she found out I was an antidepressant. She got angry, and she got angry that the doctor put me on that, but never actually sat down and asked me what was really wrong. And I had this conversation with her, and she said to me, she was really upset. She cried. So I was in denial. I didn't really understand, how to deal with it, what to do. My mum was a nurse, so she's a very matter of fact person. She's a very strong person. She doesn't understand people who aren't strong. So she just didn't understand, but, she completely, brought us together in terms of an understanding as we grow older. And then we did finally break up, and, of course it was the best thing, but I started to develop bad anxiety. So when I was 19, I was then diagnosed with anxiety. And by the time I got to 23, so actually we were talking about this Club 1830 thing before we came on live, because when I was 19, sort of I'd gone to school, I'd gone to a private girls' school, I'd got all of the grades. And I really had to work hard to get the grades, went to university and just felt more lost than ever. I did not know what I was meant to do with my life, what my purpose was. My friends were going off to uni to become doctors and lawyers and teachers, and they knew what they wanted to do. And I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to go and work as a holiday rep and use 100 grand's worth of private education wisely and go and get drunk, because I'd started to realize as well that getting drunk was an escape for me. And I actually hadn't touched any drugs till I was the age of 19. I hadn't even smoked weed. I was so anti-drugs. But when I got to 19 and, people around me were starting, drinking a lot, and I'd always kind of been drinking for years, but for me, it was what a perfect escape. I can get to go away. I get to party. I get to drink every night. I don't have to deal with real life. And so I did that from 19, 20, 21, 22. So I went off and I started to make that my career. I went and worked my way up the ranks and eventually, became a manager in 2011. And I was like, I'm just going to do one summer. I'm never going to go back again.
Oh, that sounds familiar. I said exactly the same when I went to be a holiday. This is another thing that we had in common. I'd seen in one of Noor's posts that she was an ex-holiday. Or in fact, you know what? I didn't. I saw it in the Facebook group. Are you not part of the Facebook group that's all holiday reps or something that had come up? Anyway. And I said exactly the same. I'm going for one season and 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I did work my way up. So I was in a management position, which was amazing. That was actually my my dream when I first started. The first time I was like, no, I'm not going to do it again. Went back again. And I thought, you know what? I've really not got a clue what I want to do in my life. So I might as well just work at this. And so I got really, really good at that job. I got really good at learning to sell and managing people and blah, blah, blah. And it really created an amazing work ethic in me. I'll never forget, actually, those years helped me become the entrepreneur that I am, because one thing that you need is work ethic. And if you can go out partying to 5 a.m. and then sell the next day, you are, work all day next day, you are done. You're
long hours. I can't remember when I went from crew, holiday repping to cabin crew. And, and I remember crew used to like really complain after we maybe did, an 8-hour flight, and they'd be like, oh, like from Dubai to London, let's just say 6 hours. And they're like, oh God, that was such a long flight. And I'm like, are you kidding me? We would have a 10-hour day followed by a 4-hour bar crawl, and then you'd be back up again. So I am completely with you on the work ethic.
And it prepared me for motherhood like nothing else. I tell you that. Like I was like, if people are like, I'm so tired, I'm getting up in the night. I'm like, oh, fucking hell, mate. This is nothing compared to being hungover and doing this. It was, so, I mean, you asked my backstory, bloody hell. I was going to say cut a long story short, but it's been the longest story ever. In 2010, I then met my husband, who was actually a guest in one of the hotels that I was working at. And holiday romance. I thought it was a holiday romance. Ended up not being a holiday romance 11 years later.
Oh, I love it.
You literally, I'll never forget, like I just come out of a relationship and I was like, I'm going to be single. And then I actually share this story in my new book that comes out in October, actually, because I talk about how when we're completely detached from an outcome, how it just completely manifests so much quicker. And I had decided for the first time in all of my life that I wanted to be single rather than continually going from relationship to relationship. So I'd literally been in like 6 serious relationships up until that point. And so I was like, no, I'm going to be single. And I actually broke up with my previous boyfriend on July the 16th, 2010. We broke up. So I was like, I'm going to be single. That's it. I'm going to go traveling. Like, I'm not going to be in relationships. I met Richard on July the 17th, 2010. I ended up falling pregnant with my daughter Layla in the winter of 2011, which really was a bit of a spanner in the works in terms of like, well, I thought I was going to have my shit together when I had a baby. I thought I was going to have a job. And here I was now, literally having to leave the career that I was working in as a club rep, or a manager now. I was
that you really enjoyed by the sounds of it.
Sorry?
And that you really enjoyed, like you enjoyed that.
I mean, look, it was really hard in the last year because Rich was at home in the UK. Obviously, he had a job, and I had to spend the summer abroad. And that was really hard because it was sort of bittersweet because I finally got to this promotion that I'd wanted. I was now a resort manager for Ibiza, which is it was our biggest resort actually. So, I had really climbed the ranks and got to where I wanted to be, but it was bittersweet because, of course, my partner, the love of my life, was at home in the UK. And yeah, he did fly out to come and see me, but it's not quite the same. So I was already kind of umming and ahhing about whether I continued, working for club, but I was so lost in my life. I didn't know what I was meant to do. And now I'm here 24 years old. My liver's probably on its fucking last legs. And I'm nowhere nearer to finding what I'm meant to be doing with my life. So, and then obviously I gave birth to my daughter, and that for me was the start of the rest of my life. It was the start of me realizing and deciding that I actually wanted to do something really good with my life, really important. And I always kind of knew that I wanted to do that. I just didn't know which box I fit into. And what I come to realize was there ain't no fucking box for me. That was the fabrication of my own mind. There was no box for Noor. I had to create my own bloody box. And actually my box, isn't really a box. It's just a big, beautiful open space. And I sort of started this journey 9 years ago when my daughter, 8.5 years ago, my daughter was born, of really figuring out what was my place on this planet, how I could create my own success. And, Layla gave me that fire in my belly that I needed to just go and create something really special. So that's kind of my story up until starting my business, really.
So what was that, which I love, by the way, but what was that point where you're like, or what's that one thing that you go and do? Because, loads of people get to points in their life that they're, stuck, or they're like, how do I move to the next level? Did you pick up a book? Did you go and do a course? Was it, you had the fire in your belly, but what was the first step on that ladder, I guess?
Well, it's so interesting you ask this because my next book is actually all around finding your purpose. I get this all the time, like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? What is my purpose? And the reality is that we don't just have one purpose. This is something that we get drilled into as children. Go find your one career, go find your one job, go find that one box, go stick in that box for the rest of your goddamn life, and eat, sleep, repeat, continue. So we think we've got this one box that we've got to go and find as children. And that is a really, really overwhelming task. When we actually realize our purpose isn't to find one box, our purpose is to find whatever the fuck makes us happy and to do that every single day. And also, on top of that, to find something that also contributes to humanity, we have found the sweet spot. I truly believe that when we think that we have this one purpose, that we then get so overwhelmed trying to find it. It's a bit like, have you ever lost your keys and you're running around the house looking for them and suddenly you go, fuck, they're in my hands? It's always there inside of you what you're meant to do. And we have a blueprint. Each and every one of us has a blueprint of what we're meant to do on this planet. And for me, I knew that every single career that I'd ever looked at or like inquired about or looked at courses at throughout my time of trying to figure out what I was going to do all had one thing in common. They were helping other people. I was looking at teaching, psychology, social services, counseling. This was a real big signs of where my life was leading. But honestly, no one had really heard of coaching when I first started coaching. And then even when I started coaching, I was telling people I'm going to go to university and do a postgraduate in coaching. Everyone's like, what the fuck is that? Like, is that even a real job? People
you actually get paid for that.
Yeah, exactly. And the weird thing is that, how I got to that point was recognizing, understanding that I was in a job. I took a sales job because I needed money, of course. Like, I had a child now. I had tried throughout my first maternity leave with Layla to set up multiple businesses. I was like Del Boy. I was literally doing anything to try and make money. But what I didn't realize back then was my mindset was in the gutter. And there was no way I was going to create success with the mindset that I had. And no one had ever taught me about mindset work. I had a freaking psychology degree and no one taught me about mindset work. So I started up all these businesses, didn't continue or make any of them a success. Ended up going back to a job that I hated, that I'd taken when I was pregnant, but I had no other choice. It paid well. I got paid a couple grand a month. I thought, do you know what? It'll be fine. And that was the beginning of my self-development journey. My mum had signed up and was not working. She'd signed up, well, I guess it is still working, for an MLM company called Forever Living. We all thought she'd gone batshit crazy. She was coming home. She had gold sheets on her walls. Her office was full of self-development books. She was going to these events. She was like being super positive and talking about the universe. And I was like, I don't know who the fuck this woman is, but she obviously had this, whatever it was having such a huge positive impact on her. And I was in her office one day and I started to just take out all the audiobooks and books off her shelf. And I was working in a sales job that involved a lot of driving. So I was listening to these audiobooks in my car. And one was from Jim Rohn. And good old Jim Rohn, I mean, he's dead. I hung out with a dead guy more than I hung out with anybody else.
His voice, though, he's so.
I love it.
It makes me fall asleep. I listen to him at night time and then I fall asleep so quickly. But he's got such amazing wealth of knowledge. He's incredible.
It kind of has that Matthew McConaughey accent going on as well, which is like,
the drawl.
Yeah, like I just love. Anyway, so I was listening to him and he was saying like, the way that you, and this has always stuck with me, the way that you find your path is by showing up in your present life the best that you can. So, i.e., instead of me waking up every day, dreading the job that I was going to, clock watching all day, hating what I was doing, not know what I was doing, count down the minutes to be back with my child, go into that day and fucking enjoy it. Go into that day and show up present every single moment. Go into that day and be the best. So I started to do this and oh my gosh, I was making more sales. I was getting more commission. And at the back of my head, my desire was always there in my heart to do my thing, to find my own path. But as I started to implement this, I took a book off my mum's shelf again, and it was called Selling with NLP. And so I thought, I'm going to just learn a bit more about sales. I'm going to get really good at this. And in that book, I took it on my honeymoon to Bali. And in that book was the first time I had come across a coach. This guy that wrote the book was a coach and trainer. And I remember reading this book, and every single hair on my body stood up. And I had this spiritual electricity going through my body. And I was like, I want to be a coach. And so on my honeymoon, I'm like literally like looking for degrees, looking for like, how do I train to become a coach? What do I need to do? And I actually applied to go back to university whilst on my honeymoon.
Love it.
But I just knew in my heart that's what I was meant to do. I didn't know how I was going to make money from it. I didn't know how I was going to get a job in it. And I didn't care at that point. I just knew with every cell of my body that I was meant to do that. And it was funny because at that point, I was like, I'm going to do some sort of sales coaching, because that's what I'd done for a decade. I'd worked in Club 1830 for sales and was doing this job. And that was one thing that I was really, really good at. But actually, that completely changed, because as I started to really delve deep into the world of self-development and manifestation and things like that, I knew that was the turning point for me. And by the time I had my second daughter, I had pretty much like completely changed who I was at the core. I wasn't depressed anymore. I didn't suffer from anxiety anymore. I didn't have to take medication for anything anymore. Like, I had found this way of living life through a different lens. And I wanted to share this with the world, because for so many years I'd felt so lost and so, like, in inverted commas, broken. I remember crying to my mum saying, why am I broken? Why have I been made faulty? What is wrong with me? Like, this can't be how normal humans feel every single day. And, it's really hard as a mother for her to hear that and not know what to do. So, and she was like, we'll do anything. We'll figure it out. We'll get help. And I remember going to like counseling and therapy and nothing really made the difference to when I truly started to do the spiritual work that I started to kind of, embody and practice in my life.
And when you talk about the sort of spiritual side, are you meaning sort of the manifestation, the showing up as the best version of you, and you're talking about meditating every day, or what? Explain that spiritual sense in a little bit more for those that are listening.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I use the word spiritual, it has absolutely zero religious connotations whatsoever. For me, the word spiritual is a reconnection with the non-physical part of you, and a full realization and understanding that you are not just this human robot that has to eat, sleep, shit, repeat, go to work, pay your taxes, get a pension, go on a cruise and die, right? That is not what we are here for. And when I started to understand that, and I started to understand that actually we are vibratory beings living in a vibratory universe, that everything's a fucking illusion, and actually we are way more powerful. We have the power to create our lives. We have the power to use our thoughts. We have the power of our imagination. When I started to really understand that and put that into practice and see my life change, I realized, wow, like, I am not a product of my externals. I don't need to be a product of my external circumstances. I can be a product of my internal world. I'm a product, of everything I'm thinking inside my mind. And suddenly this hopeless, powerless girl who didn't know how to take control of her life, who felt lost, who felt like everything was happening to her, completely shifted and realized, wait a minute, I'm part of this incredible tapestry. I'm part of the universe. I'm part of this, infinite field of possibilities. I have the power to create. And once I started to kind of take my wand out and know how to use it again, magic was happening in my life. And everything started to change. Literally fucking everything. And I started to realize that, and this is what I talk about in my next book, spoiler alert, your purpose is to connect back to that, to realize everything that you've ever been taught is complete bollocks. And that actually it's not about going somewhere. It's about remembering who you truly are at your very core, and trusting that, and realizing that actually, when I was a child and thought everyone else was batshit crazy, I was right. And watching how the world worked. And, I used to ask questions like, who invented school? Why do people have to go to work Monday to Friday? Who decided the week was Monday to Friday? Why didn't someone make the weekend Monday to Friday? All these questions baffled me, because I was like, who is running the show? who is deciding this happening? And as I got older, I was like, why is there so many people with mental health problems? Why is there so many people suffering? Why is there so much poverty? What? And all of these questions I couldn't get my head around. And as I started to realize and grow older, is that we are put in a system where we're taught not to thrive. We're taught to survive. So, my purpose of my second book is really to get people to wake up, realize they're not humanoids, they aren't robots, that they are spiritual beings, they are human, spiritual beings living a human existence. And actually, when we can tap back into that, we have unlimited power to create just the best freaking life.
Amazing. What's one thing that you've manifested that you've been like, that you not didn't think would happen, but really surprised you in the sense of, I know this 100% works?
Oh my God, so many things that I literally be all day. But let me just give you a couple. So, I wrote in 2017, I was in Los Angeles, and Los Angeles is like my soul home. I really feel like in a past life I must have been there. And I was there, and I wrote down on a list. I was at an event. I wrote down on a list. I want to get a book deal. I want to get a TEDx talk. And bear in mind, like, I just started my business, so I was literally like a nobody. No one knew me. I didn't have about 10 followers. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to write down these things that I want. Literally within 2 weeks, I get a phone call out the blue from someone who was running a TEDx event. Someone had dropped out, and someone had recommended me. And they were like, would you be up for doing it? It took 48 hours. I was like, whoa. So I was like, okay, maybe coincidence, right? Then I was like, right, I want to get a book deal. And, against all of the odds, against all the rejections, I ended up getting a book deal with one of the top 3 biggest publishers in the country, the top 3, with Hachette.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a story that literally, like, even when I tell it every single time, it gives me goosebumps. Back in June 2017, I was walking around New York City. I just held an event there, which was a dream. And I was listening to Jen Sincero's You Are a Badass.
Oh, I love that book. I tell so many of those I mentor to listen to it. It's a great book.
Yeah. I was listening to it on Audible, and I was in my heart, like, I was like, oh my God, like, I want to write a book that makes me feel the way that Jen is making me feel. And I felt like I already kind of knew that my style of writing, the way that I converse, was quite similar to her. And in the privacy of my own heart and my own head, I said to myself, I want to be like the UK Jen Sincero. Like, I want to be British Jen Sincero. And obviously, I'd never said that out loud to anybody else, because number one, that's fucking cringy. And number two, it's like, you don't want to be like anybody else, right? So I kept it in my own little head. And fast forward, so this is June 2017, fast forward to March the 3rd, 2018. I get an email from my agent who says to me, Hachette, I've just offered you a book deal. Here's the email. And she'd emailed them in the morning. She had never in the history of book deals has anybody ever gotten back to me so quickly and offered someone a book deal and show me the email. And my jaw hit to the floor. It said, we are Jen Sincero's UK publisher, and we have been looking for the British version. And we truly believe that Noor.
Love it.
I literally read this, and I can't even to see that they were like, we've been looking for a British kind of version, and we really believe Noor could be it. There was no fucking debating anymore. There's something out there was listening to me. And then with my third daughter, I was like, I'm going to have a home birth. It's going to be on a weekend. My mother-in-law is going to be there because she's not been at any of the births of my grandchildren. My kids are going to be asleep upstairs. I'm going to give birth downstairs. And I planned it all out. And literally every single thing happened. Yeah, my kids are upstairs asleep. I gave birth downstairs. My mother-in-law was there. It was the weekend. And it was funny because after I gave birth and I was on my sofa, and the midwife says to me, oh gosh, you're bleeding a bit, and I think you have to go to hospital. And I was like, no, that wasn't in the plan. She's like, what plan? I went, the plan. I mean, everything else has come to fruition. Like, that's not, I'm not going to hospital. I'm not going to need stitches. Like, that's not happening. And she was like, I'm really sorry, but I can't stop the bleeding. So I'm like, fucking hell. Like, I got in the ambulance. They took me to hospital, and I got to the hospital, and the doctor went, you're not bleeding. You don't need stitches. And I was like, I told her it wasn't in the plan. She didn't believe me. But it was really funny because even the night before I gave birth to Mira, I was 37 weeks pregnant, and I was in my kitchen, and I just had this strong intuition, I'm going to go into labor. And my mother-in-law was actually going out to a wedding and she was going to get drunk. So I was like, fuck, do I tell her? Like, don't go just in case. Like, that's crazy. I can't tell her, oh, I've got a gut feeling. Don't go to the wedding. It was also her birthday. Don't go out on your birthday. Don't go to your friend's wedding. Because I have a hunch. So I literally stood in my kitchen and looked up at the sky and I was like, right, universe. I don't know, I was looking up at the sky. Right, universe, I need you to show me a purple butterfly. I need to show me a butterfly if I am going to go in labor tonight, because I just need to know if this gut feeling is right. Anyway, so we've gone to have dinner and I've got a salad and a little bit of red onion falls on the side of the table. And I went to pick it up. My daughter went, no, mummy, don't move my butterfly. I look at Richard and I always teach this to people, like sometimes the symbols aren't actually
the
like
actual thing.
Literal. So I took a photo of this fucking piece of red onion, sent it to my agent, and I said, if I go into labor tonight, I've just asked for a sign, and I've got this whole message and that photo on my phone. I always share it with my people because to prove to them this story is real. And I sent it to my agent. I went, if I go into labor tonight, I swear to God, I will never, ever, 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 ever doubt anything about the universe ever again, like not even one speck. And I look at my husband, who obviously like thinks I'm batshit crazy still. You know, it's a red onion, no, it's not a butterfly. And we finished dinner. I stand up, boom, my fucking waters break right there and then.
Oh wow, what a story!
On the living room floor. And I looked at him and I went, don't ever tell me the universe doesn't know what it's doing. So yeah, that was obviously, and I literally messaged my agent 5 minutes later. And she thought I was completely taking the piss that my waters had broken, you know. And I was like, I swear to God. She was like, this has to go in the book. I was like, of course it has to go in the book. But so yeah, I mean, in terms of like stories you asked me, I mean, literally, I have so many more like that. It's unbelievable. But those three, I definitely think are ones that always stick to my head.
Oh, I love it. And it's just that connection, and people can relate to it. And I love a story or three. A couple of little more questions before we wrap up, and you can tell people about your new book, when's it coming, and a little bit about the one that I read. But something that you do is, we've talked about a little bit today about, making money. Sales was something that, you had your background in, and you teach. Would you say teach? You help, you inspire people that they can also be rich. What's the myth about it? Why do people think they can be, or what is it that holds them back about that?
Well, once again, we live in a system which is designed to help us survive, not thrive. So I think the first book for me that really changed this was a book, Think and Grow Rich. So I highly recommend that every single person reads that. And actually what's so weird is that book, I read that book whilst in Costa Coffee after just throwing up my guts up because I had morning sickness with my second daughter. And I was sat in Costa Coffee, like scanning this book, like reading this book and like just devouring every page. And I felt angry, like, could this be real? Like, no one's ever told me this before. I went to private school. I went to university. No one's ever told me that I can use my mind. No one's ever told me that we can create wealth. No one's ever taught me this stuff about money. And that was the beginning of this like long obsession with understanding money mindset. And it's funny because actually one of my biggest dreams actually is to walk into Heathrow Airport and see my book. And I haven't ever had that because WH Smith didn't take my book on. So it wasn't going to be in Heathrow Airport. And the other day I get a picture from one of my clients because they all know this has been one of my dreams. And she went, no, you're never going to believe it. I'm in Heathrow Airport in WH Smith.
Oh no.
And your book. And it is sat right next to Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
I have got goosebumples. My hairs have just stood up all over my arm.
And literally, I have to message my agent going, so I messaged her and went, are you sure this isn't WH Smith's? Because no, my publishers haven't told me. My agent hasn't told me. No one actually knew that WH Smith took the book on. Well, no one told me anyway. So obviously this is a huge, for WH Smith to take my book on after 2 years is like, they would only take on books that proved success. So to see my little book next to Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, which is a book which changed the trajectory of my life. It was like a moment for me, like a milestone moment of just realization of how full circle I've come from that moment in Costa back in 2014 to being here sat next to Napoleon on the fucking shelf, so that was obviously just an amazing moment for me. But that led me to the science of getting rich. Wallace D. Wattles, and led me to The Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, T. Harv Eker. And as I started, and How Rich People Think, and I started to understand more and more and more, money is energy. Money is a representation of the value you put in the world and how valuable people think you are, and thus how much they pay you. So if you want to make more money, you just have to become more valuable. You have to figure out a way of how you can serve others. And so I think there's a lot of myths around money, because money is something that we fear. It is the thing that runs the world, whether we like it or not. It does run the world. When we don't have it, we are scared, anxious, frustrated, overwhelmed. When we do have it, we don't often know what we should do with it, or we just spend it and we're back to square one. And cultivating a healthy relationship with money is something that I think is so freaking paramount to every single human on this planet. And I just think, the fact that it's not taught to people, there's a reason, Unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the world is designed for 99% of the people to be under a certain earning bracket, and for 1% of the people to be the richest people on the planet. And I think one thing that I feel so passionate about is helping people to break that, so they can create the wealth, so that then we can make the difference to those that need it. Because, digressing slightly, but there's enough money in the US Federal Reserve to wipe out poverty straight away. Like, we could wipe it out. And things like that really, really, really upset me, because this is where our world is run by ego and not love. Our world is run by, greed and power. And the only way that we can change that is by creating our own wealth, so that we can then make the difference that we want to make, where we want to make it. So I think the myths around money are that there's a limited supply of it. I used to truly believe, like, I went to private school, but I lived in a 3-bed, tiny terrace ex-council house. And I would go to my friends' houses, who, I shit you not, lived in like Wimbledon Village, in these mansions where I would literally get lost. And so I genuinely believed that that's how, like, we were the other half. Like, there's one half that are lucky and wealthy, and there's one half that aren't. And my parents both had good jobs. We did move out of that house eventually to a much, bigger house, not still on the wrong side of Wimbledon. It was like the shitty side of Wimbledon. It's not anymore. There's no shitty side of Wimbledon now. Now there's no shit side of Wimbledon. Everything's beautiful, and all the houses are worth loads. But back then there was like a nice side and there was a shitty side. Yeah. So I live, in the ghetto. And so I genuinely believe, like, my dad was a lawyer. My dad was a fucking lawyer. He had his own firm. My mum was a manager, in Chelsea Knightsbridge for care homes. They both had decent salaries. But by that point, you still couldn't live the life that people at that higher level lived. So for me, I was seeing my parents working all these hours, and we still did not live the life that other people lived. So for me, again, it was like, well, my belief systems were, well, it doesn't matter what job you get, you're still never going to have that lavish life, because it's not meant for you, because you're not one of the lucky ones, because you're not one of the wealthy ones. And it's so funny, because we have such perceptions as well around wealth and whatnot. I mean, I did a TikTok video the other day, and I was sharing how I, that growing up, I truly didn't believe, like, for me, I truly believed that my best goal that I could ever work for was making 50K a year by the time I was 50. So I would work up to 50K a year by the time I was 50. And then I shared that actually I make 50K a month. I bank at least 50K a month. And the amount of trolls that came out was off the fucking scale. They were like, and these were the funniest comments. You don't look like you live in a mansion, you're a liar. Your room looks like you bought stuff from Home Bargains. Yeah, I fucking have. And what?
What's your problem with that?
IKEA and B&M. Fuck, like, if you got, but it's so funny how people's perceptions is like, you've got to have this like really lavish lifestyle, but and all this stuff. Otherwise, you can't be wealthy. And what they don't understand is my net worth, or the properties that I've bought, or that stuff, or the fact that we're trying to buy another house, but I haven't managed to yet. But the point being is that all of these myths around money, all these beliefs that we have, are so distorted and so wrong. So when we start to really understand money at a fundamental level, and I have a program called You Can Be Rich, and I teach this whole process over 30 days, you start to understand what money truly is, what its purpose is, how to understand what your beliefs are around money, how to undo that programming, how to create new beliefs, yada, 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 yada. Thus then opening the gateway to creating and attracting more of that currency energy into your life.
Love it. It's funny when you talk about things when you were younger, what you wanted. I remember like when I was about 7 or 8 saying to my mum, seeing an advert on the car and it was a Sea Ibiza. And I remember saying one day I would love to be able to afford that car.
Do you know what? That was my car that he gave me was when I was a manager in Club 1830.
No way.
Felt like Billy Big Balls. I was like driving around in my Seat Ibiza in Ibiza. I was loving life. So no, definitely. It's so funny. I'm not really a materialistic person. This is something that is so funny because like one of my best friends, she knows how much I earn, and like I literally like still like buy clothes from H&M. Like I don't care for designer clothes. Like, you know, my outfit will never probably be more than like 70 quid because I just wear leggings and a hoodie and trainers. I'm just not, I don't care for watches. I'm just not a fair person. She was like, no, like you look like a poor person. She went, it always blows my mind. I don't have designer handbags, which is like, it always blows my mind on like how people would never guess. And I remember walking into my accountant years ago and actually left that accountant because she made me feel really uncomfortable. And she looks at my accounts. I've rolled in my leggings and my hoodie and sat down. And she looks at my accounts and went, how have you made all this money?
Oh my God, she actually said that.
Yeah, but like she was genuinely, I think, so perplexed at seeing this kind of like 30, I was 30 years old probably at the time, or 31 years old, sat in front of her. And she just couldn't, like, I think people don't put two and two together because they don't live this lavish life. I'm just not that person. I mean, the only thing that I've got that's ever so slightly flashy is a Range Rover because that was the car that I've always wanted. And actually, I didn't get the one that I really wanted. I got the Velar, and I'm going to get the one that I really want next year. Because if I get the one I want already, I've got nothing to fucking work up to. Because I'm not a materialistic person, but I do love traveling and holidays and creating memories with my kids and things like that. So yeah, it's really fun, like all these perceptions about like what a wealthy person should be or what they should have or
weird or be. Yeah, absolutely. So I think you need to tell people your book, the first book that I read. Actually, I remember where I was walking around Damac Hills in Dubai, listening to your book. So what's the name of the first book? Share that with everyone. And then can you share the name of your second book?
Well, the first book is called Just Fucking Do It. And it's it's kind of the starter to my second book. The second book's kind of the main and the dessert if you're really lucky as well. But it's the starter, and it really talks a bit about my background, but also what really helped me change, and really talks you through the steps of manifestation and like personal development. And, I'm so incredibly blessed because, every single day I wake up to just gorgeous messages from people all over the world who've read my book and sharing it and, tell me that's changed their life. So, that's a really amazing kind of introductory book to what I believe helped me change my life and can help everyone else change their life. So this is actually the first time that I'm going to be sharing the name of my second book because it has not been announced yet to anybody. But the name of my second book is called You Only Live Once. And it's about finding your purpose and really stepping into your biggest life. I actually can't remember what the byline is off the top of my head, which is always really, really good at promoting a book. But I've been waiting anxiously for my editors to actually send me the proof of the front cover. So, but yeah, hashtag YOLO. So we've got hashtag JFDI, hashtag YOLO. And yeah, it's all about really just if you feel stuck in life at any level, or you don't feel like you're living the life that's meant for you, or you feel like you can't access that more that that's there for you, that this book is going to really help you to understand why and then how to change that.
Incredible. Well, I cannot wait to read it. And thank you so much for sharing your title here of the second book with the audience on today's podcast. Where can people find you, Han? I think your website's not your name, it's slightly different. So share that and then your social media handles and we'll wrap up.
Awesome. So I'm at thisisyourdream.com because I used to always tell everyone when I was younger, like, go on for it, this is your dream. And it was so ironic because, my dream as a child was actually to go be on Broadway and be like a performer. And I didn't get to do that dream because everyone growing up told me that it wasn't realistic. And to be fair, like I wasn't really good at singing, so I was never going to make it really. But, or dancing.
The cabaret singing.
Yeah.
Did you have your moment in the limelight then?
Yeah, exactly. Actually didn't really, yeah, exactly. Cabaret 30 was the height of me performing. But so this is dream.com. I'm literally on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of the platforms. So just type my name and you'll find me on every platform. I'm just everywhere.
Which is your primary platform? Which one do you love communicating with the most to your audience?
I would probably say that Instagram's the one that I write the most on. And I do kind of put the stuff on Facebook. I mean, but obviously my clients are all on Facebook, so I communicate a lot with, clients, customers on there. But Instagram is the one that I have been more focused on.
And that's where we chatted on as well.
Yeah.
So happy that I managed to get you to, say you'd happy to come on here, talk about your book and just be part of it. So
thank you so much for having me.
Every success. I'm so glad we got to speak, and have an awesome summer.
Thank you. And you.
Thank you so much for being here and listening to the episode today. Were you inspired? What was one takeaway that really resonated with you? Head over to Instagram. I love to hang out there, Kelly Lundberg Official, and drop me a DM. Tell me the best part, or even better, screen share it with a friend and inspire them too. We are growing weekly and it's all down to you. Thank you so much. Reviewer of the week left this message. Easy and inspirational listening, Kelly has an infectious style which brightens your day, from Luck Scott. Thank you so much. Please keep leaving those ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts or following on Spotify. It really does make a massive difference. And remember, be inspired and keep following those dreams.